TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift's Malibu Moon, sire of Kentucky Derby winner Orb and 2017 Derby contender Gormley. Best of luck to his connections on Saturday.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown alongside Joel Cunningham. I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we've made it, man. This is our Derby pick show. It's kind of been a bumpy road this year. You know, the horses with a lot of talent, some of them kind of hit, a little speed bump in the path. You had Classic Empire, McCracken, a few of those horses went off a little bit during this season. They both seem to be doing well now, but I guess that's the best way I would look at it. It's been a bumpy road to this year's Kentucky Derby.
You know, it really has. We kind of identified 3 elite talents coming into the year, and I really thought that was Classic Empire, your Breeders' Cup winner, the runner-up in there, not this time, who's injured and retired, and the Mastery from Bob Baffert's barn, who's obviously injured. Now, Classic Empire makes it to the race, maybe not in his best condition. We'll talk about that, but I think you get a mixed bag of 20 now in here, John. It feels wide open now when you look at this group, and we thought Bob Baffert had a strong hand earlier in the year. Well, now he has nothing, and Pletcher's always a barn you really have to pay attention to, because he always is going to try to have 2, 3, 4, 5 in the race with his firepower and connections there. And to me, it's been sort of up and down in that barn in terms of who they have thought maybe their best colts were. Maybe it was Battalion Runner at one time, and then Tapper It, and then Always Dreaming was always a forward horse in the morning that's really ascended to the front now as his best hope in the Derby.
Well, it's kind of funny. You look at Always Dreaming, he kind of mirrored his sire a lot, as a horse that was kind of a late developing, didn't really do anything until he was 3 and has shown a lot of brilliance. So he reminds me a lot of Bodemeister in that respect.
He does.
All right, so we got 20 horses now that are entered into this field. Obviously, we can't talk about all 20. You've been over at Churchill. You've been looking at the horses just based off the eyeball test and then also how they drew. Tell me the horses you feel are least likely to win this year's Kentucky Derby.
I think you can throw out the first 3 gate positions here, and a lot of that's just based on history. Looking at Lee, and we'll talk about Steve Asmussen horses, they look good, but looking at Lee drawing the rail in here, you can almost assuredly throw out the rail almost every year. Now for him, he'll walk out of the gate, he'll have to lose a bunch of ground, and they'll just pray there's a fast pace up front to run at. I was a little disappointed in his Arkansas Derby. I thought he'd really run a little better in there, and he was in and out in the stretch, but to me didn't punch it in like I would hope for looking at Lee. Thundersnow, European horse, notoriously not the fastest out of the gate, particularly like the American Dirt Colts. Again, break from the 2-hole, he's going to take all that spray, get bumped around. He's looked good in the mornings, but to me, he looks all turf, in my opinion. I just don't see him getting the trip. And then Fast and Accurate, he may actually get a call in here. I mean, it just depends on how aggressive they want to be. Yeah. I still question whether or not, even though they say they're going to lead, I question whether or not he's good enough to even keep up with horses like maybe Always Dreaming once he gets into his good cruising rhythm. And all these jockeys are riding pretty earnestly out of the gate. So I think that first quarter mile is going to be rather quick, and I'm not even sure Fast and Accurate. He's going to have to break sharp, in my opinion, to be forwardly placed with the top colts in here. And then I'll go the outside here. I'm willing to throw out Patch. An interesting storyline, John.
Yeah.
I mean, horse with no left eye draws a 20-hole in the Kentucky Derby. If you watch his Gulfstream and Louisiana Derby and his Gulfstream races, they've made a point to rally him up the inside, so he had a target to look at with that right eye. They're not going to have that luxury now, seemingly. Now, he's a grinder. They'll eventually tuck him in, and maybe they can sort of save some ground somewhere with him and find a target, but you can't like it if you're a Patch fan to see him drawn in the 20-hole. And I'll even go another step further. I'll take the 19-horse out as well, and that's Practical Joke. So here I am. I've taken 5 out, and I still think 15 have a shot to run pretty well in here. And Practical Joke has done nothing wrong in his training. Super classy horse, but for me, he's going to lose ground, and they are running him without blinkers now.
Okay.
Chad Brown didn't, I don't think, like his work the other day with the blinkers. But to me, he's a horse that's lacked a punch, in the stretch in his 2-turn races. So now going 1.25 miles, and the theory of him losing ground from 19 pole, it's hard for me to like him.
All right, well, I'll ask you the same question just based off the eyeball test. It's so important this time of year that these 3-year-olds are peaking. Their coats are important. How that they're carrying their weight is important. Yeah. I mean, these guys are masters at getting these horses to peak at the first Saturday in May. Now, the horses have to cooperate, so it's interesting. That's why you spend so much time over at Churchill Downs and looking at these horses. Who do you think look the best right now this week?
I'll say this. I'm a visual handicapper. So even if I'm betting races on the TV, I don't bet on paper in advance. I will try to figure out the race in advance and who the contenders are, but I don't bet a race until I see the horse. I won't bet on a horse until I see him. I'm very much a visual handicapper with respect to trusting my eyes and performance and trusting my eyes in the way they look before the race, because horses have bad day. I mean, let's face it, even the best horses are going to lose more races than they win, right? I mean, that's just the nature of the sport. They don't talk to you. They can't tell you what's going on. So sometimes you have to look for signals on whether or not they're on top of their game. And that's why I think I'm not reinventing the wheel. You know, it's no magic dust going to Churchill Downs for 10 days leading up to the Derby. It's not like you're going to unveil this great secret about this horse that nobody's ever heard of.
Sure.
Keep it in perspective of what it is. All I can tell you is some horses that I think are doing well and are big prices I think could run well in here, particularly when you're looking at history. And while the race has been formful the last couple of years, you know, if you go back to Commanding Curve, he was a horse that caught our eye. Didn't fit on paper at all. Caught our eye based on the way he liked Churchill Downs. He completed the exacta in the Kentucky Derby at a monster price. Golden Soul, another horse that caught our eye that year. Animal Kingdom, a horse that caught our eye, won the Derby at, what, 20-1. So I do think it's important in terms of trying to unearth in a wide open year like this to where, you know, almost equate it to like the NCAA tournament. There's no top-heavy horse. You know, there's no team out there that you would say, man, that's the team to beat, in my opinion. But there are 5 or 6 of the top, you know, horses, and like I said, in the NCAA, you get to the final game and you're looking for the Cinderella. Bottom line is you get to the final game, it's 2 #1 seeds. I think it's going to be like that. It looks wide open right now. I still think one of the top 5 or 6 horses will win the race, but I do think there could be a long shot that could certainly pay boxcars in the exacta and trifecta. And so when I'm looking at long shots, I got 3 names for you. I talked about Steve Asmussen. I really have liked the way his horses have looked in the 10 days I've seen them train there. And they haven't done anything spectacular, you know, in terms of their workout times or anything like that. I just love the way they get over the track and their physical appearance. And to me, the 2 that looked the best were Hintz, who's becoming that wise guy horse. You know, he's not a big, tall horse, but he's heavy, carries a lot of condition. He looks like he's doing extremely well right now. So if you're a Hintz fan, now look at that stamina in the female family and say, okay, he makes sense. I'm not a big fan of the Sunland Derby as much as most people were, but I do think the horse is doing very well locally, and he comes in fresh, sitting on a big race. I like his other horse probably the best, John, and that's Untrapped. I mean, he'll be 50-1 in the race. I think he can actually navigate a good inside trip in here. If they break out of the gate, follow Always Dreaming around there, save ground. Here's a horse that if you go back and look at his race, he made me go back and look at all of his race replays because he's been a horse I've never really liked because he's by trap shot and you want to stereotype. Look, he looks nothing like a trap shot. Trap shots are, you know, shorter coupled sprinter looking type horses. He's nothing like that. He's a big, long, classic looking, well-balanced colt with a big stride, gets over the track extremely well. He looks like he'll run for days. So when I look at Untrapped, sitting in that second flight, if he gets that inside stalking trip, based on the way the pace scenario is going to be, I think he's a horse that could trip out in here, actually punch through the inside and have a real shot at 50-1 of hitting the board in here. To me, he's the best long shot. And I think the other one you have to use is State of Honor. You know, what's he going to be in this race? You know, 35, 40-1. He's the other Mark Cassidy horse. Looks tremendous. Looked tremendous the entire time. And even today, he might have looked as well as he's looked. I mean, he looks on top of his game right now. He is a true classic horse. He's a true mile-and-a-quarter horse physically. And I think he's going to be part of the pace, too. He's going to be up in there in that second flight. And again, you want, I think, tactical speed in this Derby. I don't think you want a lot to do because I'm not seeing a lot of defined speed here. So I just mentioned 3 horses there. I would bet you anything one of those 3 horses hits the board. There's more likelihood in terms of the way they're doing and the trip they're going to get. I would say that there's a good chance that one of those 3 horses hits the board Saturday.
All right, and for all the East Coast fans who haven't seen the California horses, I know you mentioned to me you thought Gormley looks really well. Maybe the best of all the California horses would be Gormley at this point. So that's exciting to kind of see these California horses coming over.
He does.
So let's go to the race day, and let's, you know, we're there. It's Saturday. We got these 20 horses are in the gate. Yeah. Let's just give everybody a fair break, and let's just say they all come out. It's a clean break.
Sure.
Who do you think takes control of this year's Kentucky Derby?
Well, you look at the race flow. Where's the speed drawn? And to me, it's the inside. The 3, 4, 5, 6 gate, all tactical. I think Always Dreaming, Johnny V, he's a good gate horse. You know, they think that they're on the horse to beat. They're going to push out of there. John's horse is doing fantastic. There's no way they're going to risk the cavalry charge coming over on them. Johnny V is going to press out of there, and that's why you get maybe the fastest quarter in the Derby could be the first one. They're going to run earnestly that first turn, John, to try to get position. All 20 riders will. They'll be pushing out of there for the most part. A lot of them will. And Johnny V will lead the charge. I think he's going to try to take the field on the first turn. I don't know if fast and accurate. They say they're going to the lead. I don't know if he's fast enough to even make the lead with as quick as they're going to try to push out of the gate to get position. I think he could get trapped down on the inside. So I expect Always Dreaming to be on the lead heading in that first turn. And I really think the winner of the draw was Irish War Cry. From the 17 post, I mean, you look, again, where are the closers drawn in here? They're drawn all around Irish War Cry, particularly to his inside. So if he breaks sharp with his natural tactical ability and natural speed, I think it's going to put him, and you're going to see Rajiv Mirage probably peek over at Johnny, find him, and I think you'll see him, Irish War Cry, ease over and try to find a nice stalking position. Now here's a horse that's always had outside trips. He doesn't want to be stuck inside anyway. I think you see him in the clear trying to stalk Always Dreaming. Those are the two that are most interesting going to that first turn.
You know, the first turn is really important. Obviously, you're trying to get there, and you've taken a lot of energy. The horses have exerted a lot of energy. You got to try to get them to now gather themselves. Who are the horses who are willing to come back to their rider, catch their breath, get into their stride? And this is where jockeys, I think, are very important. You know, the Derby is so amped up. You're trying to win this thing. You got to really know Churchill Downs and know how to position these horses. Take me to the backside and tell me, how do you see the field? Is it going to be all spread out? Are they going to be clumped up? Do you think that if Always Dreaming is in the lead, will he come back to the field a little bit? Tell me what you think.
I think what you just said there is the million-dollar question. To me, that's the mental part of the Derby. Like, I'll give you an example with Always Dreaming and Irish War Cry. I mean, Irish War Cry has sort of been a handful in the mornings. We know Irish Dreaming has been, even though his last few mornings have been really good. They've been having to go out early. He breezes by himself with draw reins, and he trains with the draw reins early in the morning. He's obviously a horse that is jumping out of his skin right now. Irish War Cry, since he's been here, he's also, shown some antics. They had some issues with schooling with him in the paddock yesterday, obviously. He's a horse that, again, gets very headstrong in his races. I mean, look at that Fountain of Youth. He could have, if he would have come back to his rider, Joe Rosario in the Fountain of Youth, I think he would have been able to sit off of, the Florida bred in their 3 rules, stalk him around there and go on with it. He didn't do that. He actually engaged him too early down the backside, got way too keen, ran way too early, got out of a good cruising rhythm, and it looked like Joel had to even take him out to 3 or 4 path to sort of disengage there, and he ran his race before they hit the top of the stretch. If that sort of Irish War Cry shows up and can't switch off, that's a concern. Because quite honestly, and same with Always Dreaming. Now, Always Dreaming has always proven he will come back to Johnny, so I'm less concerned about him.
Yeah.
But that's a concern, John. You take these 2 horses, there's going to be, 2 of the top 3 or 4 choices in the race. In my opinion, both forwardly placed with each other into that first turn after running earnestly at first quarter mile. How will they come back to the riders? I'm less concerned with Always Dreaming. Irish War Cry, he concerns me a little bit in terms of the middle moves he's shown in his races and how keen he gets wanting to go after the front runner.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. You talked earlier about class meeting talent. That's one of the things about American Pharoah that was so good, is he was a horse who had that tactical speed. They could say, hey, I need you to give me a little bit. We got to get in position. Now come back to me. He was always willing to kind of, once you could go, you could stop. You could go, you could stop. Some of these horses, once they start, and they start going, they don't want to come back. Well, take me to the top of the stretch now and tell me how you think that the Kentucky Derby is going to finish. Where do you see the horses that are maybe in that second flight? Tell me, where do you see these guys?
Well, we talked a lot about Always Dreaming and Irish War Cry, so I won't talk about them. I fully expect them to be there at the quarter pole with each other. So what has the pace been like up to that point, and what's coming, right? Well, I personally don't see a lot of speed signed on here. So why even, if they have the track tuned up, sure, maybe the fractions look fast. I mean, just like Bodemeister's year, the fractions look fast, but he was getting over the ground pretty well, and he was not getting tired despite carving out those sort of fractions. And I think that's the way the Derby's been now. With the graded stakes earnings out, you get all those 2-year-old sprinters out of the field, you get legit 2-turn horses, and now battalion runners out of the race. You start looking, you don't see, when you look at the PPs in the early, where these horses are, the first quarter of the race, most of them in their life, not many, you won't see many ones. You see a lot of horses that like to come from off the pace or stalk. Even Always Dreaming, who I think will be on the lead, he typically wants to stalk a pace setter and have something run at. So what that means is that the pace is going to be moderate at best, which I think it's going to be. So I think that bodes well for Always Dreaming and Irish War Cry. That does not bode well for the closer. So if I'm GUNNEVERA, or I'm a fan of McCracken and some of these closer types, I'm a little concerned. J. Boys Echo, and there's a lot of them. I'm concerned at this point whether or not they can make an impact on the race. I'm looking at that second flight, John. So when they're approaching the quarter pole, who's sitting in that second flight, sitting on a good race and has the ability to make an impact on the race? And to me, those horses are Untrapped, like I talk about. I think he's a live long shot with that trip. State of Honor is doing fantastic, tactical horse. And the stablemate, Classic Empire. So again, I think drew well from the 14 gate here. I mean, you've got, you know, look at the closers around him. Gunnevera's in 10. Battle Midway, I don't think he won a lead last time out. He's not as tactical as Classic Empire. Sonneteer's a closer. J-Boy's Echo. Then look at outside of Classic Empire. McCracken, Tappert. Classic Empire is more tactical than all of them. So I think you know, breaking out of there, Julian's going to be able to find his trip in that second flight with the way he drew in here. You got to love the way Classic Empire drew. I think he's at that point now. Can the champ step it up? Can he run down a horse like Always Dreaming based on that type of trip? That's where the race gets very interesting.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and talk about the finish then. It sounds like Always Dreaming in your mind is taking control of the lead. You got Irish War Cry on the outside. Tell me, do you think a horse comes and runs him down, or do you think Always Dreaming takes it?
You know, I've loved the way Always Dreaming has done at Churchill Downs. Yeah, there's been some mental concerns, you know, and he's been a handful, but he is jumping out of his skin, John. And they've really liked the way he's done the last few mornings. They've been taking him out early with the draw reins. You get a little concerned. Trust me, he's a horse that I won't bet until 5 minutes to post, because if he doesn't handle the walk over the paddock, the post parade, the full experience, but he's shown in his races. Look, he had a reason in the Florida Derby when he got bumped pretty soundly going to that first turn to get rank on Johnny V. He did not. He came right back to him, got in an awesome rhythm. Always Dreaming is a colt that I think it's upside with him. Based on the way he's training, based on the talent I feel he's had this entire season that he finally showed in the Florida Derby. He is that beautiful blend of stamina and speed that I do believe he gets from his sire, Bodemeister. And to me, his energy level, when you look at the gallop outs in his work, that's where you want to measure the Todd Pletcher workouts. He gallops out like a monster. I think he's going to kick on here. I call a wire-to-wire win for Always Dreaming here. I don't think Irish War Cry can get to him. I think he tries. I still think Irish War Cry runs a pretty credible race in here. You know, in terms of horses coming at that point, I do think Classic Empire, he's got so much class. I do feel like, you know, he's accomplished over this track. He'll get a good enough trip, make a good account for himself. So I like Classic Empire coming up to get second here. Untrapped, hey, 50-1. I'm willing to, if he gets that ground-saving trip like I like, blinkers off, I think he has a shot in here going 1.25 miles to be on the board. So I'll put him in that 3 spot. And I think, you know, 4 and 5 is probably Gunnevera. I think he's the best of the closers still. Once he gets that long stride going down the Churchill stretch, I think he's doing well enough, and he's so honest. I think Gunnevera is going to get a small piece of this. And Irish War Cry, very interested to see how he hangs around. Can he actually battle Always Dreaming? Could he test him, or will Always Dreaming break his heart? And then where does that leave Irish War Cry, the final 1/8 of a mile? You know, if he gets his heart broken, will he totally fade out, or will he finish earnestly to the wire? Because I am a little concerned still about Irish War Cry, where he is in terms of his overall class level.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for me when I look at it. I'm just a little concerned. I think these two horses are just too keyed up right now. I think that they might burn each other out, Always Dreaming and Irish War Cry. And you know I got a soft spot for Dialed In, so I just think Gunnevera, man, I can see it. You know, they kind of sacrificed his prep race coming in. They took him so far back, it was almost looked like it was a strategy move. I will say my only concern is he fast enough to catch these horses? That'll be the big thing, but I'm going to go with Gunnevera. I think maybe he closes in on this. The horses get too rank early. They burn each other out, and you see Gunnevera come running late and get the Derby.
He's my favorite closer this year. You know, McCracken's looked great at Churchill Downs, not a big horse. Gunnevera, you know, again, you know, tall, skinny horse. Hasn't shown a ton of presence at Churchill Downs, but they say that's him. He shows up every time. Bottom line, again, got that long stride. Very interested to see how Gunnevera runs. But question is, will it set up for a closer? Look, I like Gunnevera. I like him as a colt. He's always been in the top 5 for us, really, since we really liked him in his breakthrough win in the Fountain of Youth that day. Can he get the pace set up? Because no question in my mind, John, Delta Downs, bull ring. Closer doesn't belong there. He won. Gulfstream, speed by his track, showed well there. Now he comes to Churchill with a big turn and long stretch. It all makes sense for Gunnevera going 1.25 miles. So I like your pick.
All right, well, before I let you go, I got to know who you got in the Oaks tomorrow.
I'm going to go with Miss Sky Warrior. I know everybody's on Paradise Woods and for good reason, but look, Paradise Woods broke her maiden at 5.5 furlongs, came back, first time 2 turns, got on speed by his track, and she was awesome in the Santa Anita Oaks. But I'll go with the filly that's just getting no respect right now, who has a 2-year-old credentials, a big winning streak, tactical speed, third off the form cycle. I like the way she's looked at Churchill Downs. I think she's a filly that can get it done at around 5-1.
All right, thank you, Joel. It's been fun watching these 3-year-olds, and thank you guys for sticking with us. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap the Derby, and we'll start talking about the Preakness.